I think it's a matter also of strengthening the prioritization in the political discourse of the AI more than it is being done until now. Remember, the AI Act gives the providers the need for, asks the providers to deal with self-assessment. It's only in a limited series of cases that there is the need for a third-party assessment. These practices are disproportionately hitting on personal freedom of people. So when we ban the indiscriminate use of biometric cameras, and we limit them only to some criminal prevention and prosecution, it's important to be sure that AI can be trusted to use tools that are not in the AI Act, but I must mention them.
Welcome to the Regulating AI Podcast. Join host Sanjay Puri as he explores the dynamic and developing world of artificial intelligence governance. Each episode features deep dives with global leaders at the forefront of regulating AI responsibly, tackling the challenges using AI can bring about head-on and enabling balance without hindering innovation.
Welcome to Regulating AI, the podcast bringing together global voices to shape fair, responsible, and inclusive AI governance worldwide. I'm your host, Sanjay Puri, and today we have the privilege of speaking with one of the most influential figures in AI regulation globally. Our guest, Brando Benifei, a member of the European Parliament representing Northwest Italy and the lead architect behind the world's first comprehensive AI regulation, the EU AI Act. As co-rapporteur on the AI Act and member of the Parliamentary Committee on the Internal Market and Consumer Protection and the Special Committee on Artificial Intelligence in a Digital Age, Brando has spent several years navigating the complex intersection of technological innovation and democratic governance. In March 2024, the European Parliament adopted this landmark legislation with Brando declaring, "We finally have the world's first binding law on artificial intelligence to reduce risk, create opportunities, combat discrimination, and bring transparency." Beyond this legislation, Brando was recently selected to co-chair the European Parliament's AI monitoring group tasked with overseeing the AI Act's implementation. Brando, welcome to the Regulating AI podcast.
Thank you very much.
Brando, we have a global audience. Our audience is made up of policy leaders like you, members of Congress, Senate in the US, around the world, their staff, entrepreneurs, etc. So we're going to explore a little bit about the EU AI Act, your journey, some of the questions that people have, some of the questions we have received about this interview. So just briefly, Brando, could you tell our listeners about your background and how you came to this position?
Well, I am a third-term member of European Parliament. Now I've been already there for around 11 years. And during my second term, after 7 years of work, I, I've been selected to lead this work, having been negotiating already other legislation and working on issues related to the digital world, like the impact on the labor market of digital technologies and the copyright legislation and the impact on youth education. So I touched the topic of innovation from different sides, and when the EU started thinking of regulating artificial intelligence, I thought it would be the good task for me to take. And so I started being part of the special committee on AI that spent around 1 year studying AI deployment around the world with academics, with other policymakers, with institutions, and businesses developing AI. And after that study work, we were ready to start working on actual legislation. And that's when we started with the AI Act, which became a proposal from the European Commission, and the European Parliament started working on it. We made our amendments to the text. We will discuss some of the content. In fact, that it's also thanks to the work of the Parliament. And then we negotiated with the member states to reach the agreement and have the law become a final approved legislation.
So, Brando, it's been a big journey what you have been able to achieve. Getting so many member states to kind of agree who have different, in many cases, economies and things of that nature. So, really, kudos to you and what has been achieved. And we'll talk a little bit about there. So, Brando, for our audience, what are the top two implementation priorities, and where are you seeing the two biggest readiness gaps? That was a question that came from our audience for you.
Well, from the readiness point of view, I would say that the main issue is to accelerate education and training on AI in our societies. I think that all over Europe, we still lack that kind of focus from the institutions. And the private sector can do as much, but we need more institutional commitment on that. Some member states have been working on that. I think of the Baltic states or France, but other member states are lagging behind. And I think that's very important, because we need to make the understanding of AI a more shared element in society. For the implementation side, now we just started some pieces of the implementation. It's still ongoing. So I would say that at the moment, the two biggest challenges is implementing the prohibitions, which were one of the first elements to come into place of the AI Act. So some selected use cases that we chose to prohibit in Europe. For example, the emotion recognition in workplaces and in study places, the unlimited use of biometric cameras, and subliminal manipulative techniques through AI. So implementation of the prohibitions is at the moment one of the first challenges for the start of the implementation, which has started, in fact, only in 1 year, 1 year time. So we are still in the first phases. And in fact, the second very important challenge is that the AI office, which is the European level AI supervising institution, and the national institutions to supervise the AI Act implementation in the member states are properly installed and are given the right means to act. This is a very important point for the implementation of the AI Act, because we are confronted with very powerful developers, very powerful content, in fact, very powerful systems, and we need the supervisors to have the means to actually check the correct implementation of the law.
So that's very helpful, Brando. What you have said is some of the challenges are, as you said, education and training. Some countries, you mentioned Baltic countries, France, maybe a little bit ahead. Just briefly, is there something that can be done to bring the rest of the countries towards the same implementation cycle than others. Is there something that can be done, or is something being done to bring everybody there?
Well, I think it's a matter also of strengthening the prioritization in the political discourse of the AI more than it is being done until now, which will become necessary for the further implementation of the AI Act, but also with the implementation of measures that the EU is putting in place to accelerate the development of AI in Europe. So the so-called AI factories, gigafactories, accelerating the development of European AI. This will bring more attention. But then, to be frank, you need a political class that wants to confront itself with these challenges. The um, impact of AI, I think, can be compared more to the introduction of electricity rather than just innovations that were extremely transformative like internet, but were not pervasive on every aspect of life. I think that we need the political class and the private sector at large to be ready, and not only in some places, but everywhere. That's why we also need strong European governance. And that's why we think that it's important to have one pan-European legislation and not risk fragmentation among the member states.
So I think you're making a point about European governance, and we're going to touch on that later on, Brando. Brando, you have emphasized that the AI Act aims to build trust to enable greater AI
Yep.
uptake and use. Now, obviously, and we'll come a little bit to that, can you explain to our audience? There are some skeptics who are saying that this might hurt innovation. We'll talk a little bit about that. How can regulation actually accelerate rather than hinder AI innovation?
Well, we think that it's important to be sure that AI can be trusted. I give you one example I always use also in debates with people that are not experts. Do we really want doctors to use AI systems that are not tested to put forward diagnoses and therapies for patients? I think this is an easy example, but think also of the hiring process. Do we want really to risk having systems that are putting forward discrimination against women or non-white people? Because this issue of the quality and appropriateness of data used to train AI is one very important aspect of the rules of the AI Act. Also, do we want creatives to lose all their bargaining power and being deprived of their creativity, being absorbed completely by the training of the systems without any compensation? Even in these days, we see things moving on this topic because there is a lot of tension. Then we want to bring clarity on that. We want, with the AI Act, to bring clear rules for application of copyright provisions. And also, we want to be sure that AI content can be identifiable. These are some examples on issues where you see a value-driven approach that is based on protection of citizens, of consumers, of workers. I could give more examples. Well, this is why we think we need regulation. Not every innovation is good. We do not think it's good to have systems that can manipulate people in a subliminal way, or that can provide for predictive policing that is in fact discriminating people. These are examples of what we limit or even prohibit. So yes, more rules will create also some bottlenecks, but we need to build an incentive mechanism that can overcome these issues and, in fact, create a value-driven, human-centric innovation with AI. We think we can do that, and that this can be a model that other parts of the world can also adopt. In fact, now we see, especially in South America, a lot of debate ongoing on adopting similar frameworks. Clearly, and I conclude on this, we need to be sure that there are no duplications, contradictions. So we need also to simplify on the bureaucratic and on the implementation part. I give you one example. It's a fact, in my view, that I see it as a fact that in Europe we have issues on accessing quality data for training. We have too many complicated superpositions of rules on this. We need to accelerate the availability of quality data in Europe. And this is very important to innovate on AI. And this is something where we will need to work in the next months. But this doesn't mean that we abandon a risk-based approach on AI like the one of the AI Act.
So what you're saying is there can be a balance, I think, Brando, between innovation and regulation, and it's actually good for innovation. You talked about bureaucracy. One of the questions that came in was the AI Act has created a complex governance ecosystem with the AI office, the AI board, the scientific panel, the advisory forum. How can you make sure that it doesn't become a bureaucratic maze that stifles innovation, like you just said?
Well, it's our work to do that, because as a monitoring group of the European Parliament, we will have to monitor that the system works fine, and that its complexity is linked to the complexity of the EU, in the sense that we have the member states that are present, the Commission, the Parliament does its scrutiny. So it's also linked to that. So I hope that with more political unity of Europe, that I think it will be crucial also to become stronger on the AI competition globally, we will have more simplification also of structures. So I advocate for that, because I think they are quite linked. More political unity of Europe will mean also more simplification of the procedures. But we will do our best so that as it is today, things will be straightforward, and it doesn't create unnecessary complications. But in fact, as I mentioned earlier, one implementation challenge that comes clear up when we talk about these issues is the strength of the AI office itself. So we want that structure in the European Commission to actually do its part effectively, because it will have to follow, we could say, daily risks of AI use cases linked to the daily life of people, like examples I already made with the medical use or the administration of justice or the local institutions, but also deal, especially in a more even exclusive way, with the systemic risk of the most powerful models, because that's the other area where the AI Act deals with, to prevent safety challenges and risks at the higher level with the most powerful models.
So it is something that, as you said, with greater political support, you will work through that. One just final question on this topic, and we'll move to something else, is a lot of European companies have said that this could disadvantage European companies who are going up against American and Chinese competitors who face maybe a less regulatory burden. There was also an effort, as you know, to delay this by 2 years. What are your thoughts, Brando, on is it going to disadvantage European companies in any way?
Well, I can say two things. One thing is that we have foreseen an instrument for facilitating the access to the market by new business ideas, new startups, which is the sandboxes that are foreseen by the law to facilitate experimentation and a clear path towards putting a product into the market for new players. And this is important to reduce any competitive disadvantage with the bigger players that are already incumbent. But then also, I need to reiterate a very important thing, that the AI Act applies to all the AI developers, AI providers that want to put their products into the European market, which means that we have also non-European companies that will have to do the same things as the European ones if they want to access the European market. So we think that no one will renounce to the European market. That's our strength. So if they want to enter our market, they will need to follow these rules. They will need to do these checks on systems. If they are high risk, they will have to avoid putting prohibited use cases systems into the market and clarify what is prohibited. So these are provisions that will not apply only to the Europeans, but to all the businesses that want to be in our market. So this is important to be underlined, because the AI Act is mainly a product safety legislation, which means it's a legislation regarding what characteristics a product that enters the European market needs to have, which means that it can come from anywhere, from Europe or elsewhere. We can also have European companies that will never have to deal with the AI Act if they simply sell high-risk AI systems elsewhere and they don't sell them in Europe. So it's just that we want that what comes into Europe follows certain rules.
So that's an important point. What you're saying is European companies, non-European companies, all companies that want this big European market have to follow those rules. European companies want to sell high-risk stuff outside Europe. EU AI Act does not apply. So that's a very good point. One question came in from a non-European company saying, when a violation occurs involving a non-EU company serving European markets, what mechanisms ensure effective enforcement? How do you handle the jurisdictional challenges within the EU?
Well, that's exactly the point of ensuring that the AI office and the national authorities work well, are well staffed, and they are well organized. So this will be one important implementation challenge for us, to follow that in the next months, to check if everything works fine. Because if there is such a violation, the one of the example you just made, then the national authority will have first to deal with it, and then if there are certain conditions, it will be the EU AI office dealing with it for enforcement and for remedies. But also there are areas like the systemic risk from general purpose AI models that are especially powerful, that will be followed only by the EU AI office, because for certain challenges and enforcement needs, it's very important to have immediate centralization, so directly at European level. So we built this balance, respecting subsidiarity, the fact that we have a union of member states, but also trying to ensure coherence and to be honest, to learn also from the past, when the European Union had legislation that applied to the whole of the EU market of the 27 member states, but then the enforcement was too much fragmented at national level. So we are trying to do better on this, having more coherence, and the AI office stepping in when it's needed.
So, Brando, one of the questions that has come in, obviously, is that the GPAI, the AI office for the GPAI, can request technical documentation and even API source code access for evaluations. How do you balance, obviously, the auditability with IP protection and security?
Well, that's one of the main issues to deal with when we will implement this new part of the AI Act, which was completed through a co-legislative process, the so-called Code of Practice, where also the developers of AI systems were involved in the discussion and in the decision of a final set of rules that are a way of operationalizing obligations that are in the AI Act. Um, I'm sure this will still be an issue of discussion how we can do this balance. I think that we will see most probably an abuse of the concept of trade secret and of business secrecy to avoid enough disclosure of information. I see that. I can imagine that to some extent physiological, we could say. But I think that also to avoid a form of oligopoly forming by having a few developers of very powerful models, in fact, dictating how much transparency they can actually give to the rest of the value chain of AI. To avoid that, to avoid letting them doing it on their own, we need to make these rules work. And I know there is a lot of attention from everywhere outside Europe on how we will deal with these, with the transparency and the risk evaluation of the most powerful models. And I think it will be very important to maintain also, I would say, a global discourse on this and see how much we can extract from this specific work of the EU to have some, maybe, I hope, some common rules at international level of a basic minimum level of transparency that we can all together demand to the developers of the most powerful AI systems.
So, as you said, you'll try to balance it to make sure you can keep certain level of transparency, but obviously not allow some companies to use this as a excuse to do concentration. Uh, Brando, can you also walk through the fine bands, the 7%, 35 million for prohibited practices, 3%, 15 million for other obligations, and 1%, 7.5 million for misleading information? How will also this proportionality apply to small, medium enterprises?
Well, I think that we will see that in practice, in the sense that we are also considering certain interventions on the law to simplify its application for small and medium-sized enterprises. And on the fines side, I'm sure that we can provide enough proportionality with existing legislation, but we will see. We will see that it doesn't unfairly targets in the practice the smaller realities that can be disproportionately hit by too high fines. At the same time, if I may, we are more worried to be sure that the actual deterrence towards the most powerful developers that have more market power on all sides actually works, so that the respect for the rules will be strong, also thanks to the deterrence provided by existing fines and by the enforcement.
Great. Brando, the AI Act also bans certain AI practices completely. How do you determine which AI application should be prohibited versus regulated?
Well, if you see which ones are prohibited, they are mostly linked to one factor. These practices are disproportionately um, hitting on personal freedom of people. So when we ban the indiscriminate use of biometric cameras, and we limit them only to some criminal prevention and prosecution, but we prevent a massive use of that technology. We want to prevent mass surveillance. We want to avoid the state or private actors to actually put people under an hidden mass surveillance. And when we prohibit predictive policing, we want to avoid the suppression of the rule of law and the presumption of innocence. And so we want to preserve freedoms so that people that have done nothing to be put into criminal control or under scrutiny are not discriminated because of personal characteristics. This is what we prohibit with our prohibition of predictive policing. We do not prohibit the use of AI for crime prevention, for ameliorating the way the police works, but we want to avoid something that discriminates based on personal characteristics of people. And so, as you see, these examples also, if I may mention that, also the prevention of use of AI systems to infer emotions in workplaces and in study places, they are all having in common that these are use cases that hit strongly on personal freedoms, on the freedom of people. And we think that in a democracy, it's very important that we deter this kind of uses. And other use cases that hit on freedom are in the high risk use cases. For example, emotional recognition in the activity of police or for migration are under the high risk, so they are regulated. So in the end, it's a discretional evaluation, what to be prohibited and what to regulate more or less strongly. But if we want to see a criteria, it's the issue of preventing suppression of freedoms in a way that can also be dangerous for our democracies.
So, preventing and suppressing freedom or democracy, I think, is the criteria per se. Brando, the big talk in AI right now for some time has been agentic AI agents, etc. Should certain agentic capabilities, autonomous goal pursuit, unsupervised tool access, or financial transaction, should they serve as risk triggers for stricter classification or even systemic risk designation? Or, and if so, what minimum pre-deployment tests and runtime safeguards should be mandatory in your view?
Well, this is difficult to say now because we are still looking at the different developments of the agentic AI, but I would say that we need to be strict on seeing where there is an actual systemic risk of losing of human control or manipulation of the developers themselves. It's an area that will need to be interpreted using the lenses that we built inside the AI Act, which is mostly linked to specific use cases. So we look at the actual use that a system is devoted to, but we also look at preventive measures before a model becomes a system. So we look at, we can say, technological risks that we see. And this is what we have done with the systemic risk classification. So it might be necessary for the agentic AI to expand the use of something we have been doing very limitedly to reduce burdens for the business, but we should look into it. And I'm referring to the use of third-party conformity assessment, because mostly this is very important to remember. The AI Act gives the providers the need for asks the providers to deal with self-assessment. It's only in a limited series of cases that there is the need for a third-party assessment. And this includes, obviously, there is some third-party assessment when we look at the systemic risk in the general purpose AI, but probably it will be needed also when we look at the developments of the agentic AI, that for sure is now our area of major attention for all the implications it brings for the regulatory aspects.
No, so obviously it's something that you're going to be looking at very, very carefully. Uh, you have emphasized finally, Brando, that protecting SMEs, small, medium-sized enterprises, through the AI Act's provisions. Can you tell our audience just briefly what specific measures ensure that smaller companies can compete effectively while meeting regulatory requirements compared to these large companies who have lawyers, hundreds of lawyers, and other people to deal with this?
Well, I think first of all, we need to use tools that are not in the AI Act, but I must mention them, that are more of the national sphere. But we were clear in many instances that we support the use of incentives at national level that can be mainly of the fiscal side to support SMEs when they start being developed in this sector. In the AI Act, as I mentioned, we foresee the use of sandboxes. In fact, we made them mandatory for the member states to have sandboxes so that the SMEs can be guided towards having a product into the market with the possibility to not have from the beginning all the regulatory burden on their shoulders. This means also doing some testing that is done in protected contexts that can provide tests for the SMEs without having to follow all the rules from the beginning. This needs to be further developed. To be frank, I'm a bit disappointed with the level of development of the sandbox ecosystem for AI in the member states. They need to accelerate, and we are going to push them to respect the law and not infringe the European law, and be ready for that, because some member states are already prepared and are doing it, others are lagging behind. So you see again why it's important, even for creating instruments for facilitating the work of SMEs to have strong enforcement mechanisms, so that also the public institutions, they do their part in the correct way. Obviously, finally, I could mention also the push that we have put in many instances of the law of having more transparency on the existing characteristics and risks of the models that are used, with fine-tuning, with adaptation by smaller enterprises, because we do not want as much as possible to have a culture of the black box, of not knowing what you're doing, what you're dealing with, and putting all the risks in the shoulders of the smaller developers or even companies that do not develop AI, they simply use it and they see all the risks being sold to them through a market practice. We do not want that, and we have tried to make it possible with the AI Act so that the chain of responsibility is distributed correctly so that it's not the SMEs to take the most of the burden.
So, a lot of effort, whether it's sandboxes, transparency, education, is being done so that, as you said, the burden should not fall, at least majority, on the small businesses. Brando, there's so much more I can ask you, but towards the end, we have this lightning round because it'll give our audience who have a lot of questions for you just yes and no answers from you. You are so knowledgeable about this. So, ready, Brando?
Yes.
Okay. Brando, should AI systems used in democratic processes like voting systems be subject to special regulatory requirements beyond the current AI Act? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Do you believe the current penalties in the AI Act up to 7% of global turnover are sufficient to ensure compliance by major tech companies?
Yes.
Okay. Should there be and you kind of answered this, should there be a global AI governance body similar to the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Commission?
Yes.
Uh, should open source AI development be subject to the same regulations as commercial AI development?
It's difficult to answer yes or no. Yes, with some
Okay.
exceptions. Yes, with some exceptions.
Okay. That's good. Uh, and you are allowed all those answers, Brando. Do you support mandatory AI labeling for all AI generated content, not just in high risk scenarios?
Yes, absolutely yes.
Okay. Should individual EU member states be allowed to implement stricter AI regulations than EU wide standards
Yes, but with limitations.
with limitations? Okay. Um, is the current timeline for the AI Act implementation, 6 months for prohibited systems, 12 months for GPI, realistic? That's a hard one, Brandon.
Yes, yes, it's okay. Yes.
Okay, okay. Should AI companies be required to share algorithmic decision making processes with regulators in all cases?
Mostly.
Mostly, okay. Um, do you think the EU AI Act adequately addresses the challenge of AI bias and
Yes.
discrimination? Okay. Do you think foundational model evaluations by third parties should become mandatory for systemic risk models?
To some extent, yes.
Okay. Should watermarking disclosure of AI generated content be required beyond deepfakes, Brando?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay. And should energy emission disclosures be part of GPAI transparency?
Yes.
And finally, should there be a EU-wide safe harbor for firms that fully implement the code of practice and promptly self-report?
Mm, I'm not sure. It depends what it means. So
That's
no
okay.
for now. Then we will
Okay.
see.
Not sure. That's okay. No worries, no worries. Brando, thank you so much for this comprehensive discussion on one of the
Thank
most
you.
significant regulatory developments of our time. Your work on the EU AI Act really represents a historic milestone, not just for Europe, but also for global AI governance. As you had said when the deal was reached, thanks to the European Parliament's resilience, the world's first horizontal legislation on artificial intelligence will keep European promise, ensuring that rights and freedoms are at the center of the development of this groundbreaking technology. And you really have given us a lot of
Thank
information,
you.
addressed every question that was asked. And to our audience, whether you're in Silicon Valley, Singapore, Sao Paulo, or Nairobi, the principles and challenges we discussed today are relevant in your work. And so, thank you so much, Brando, for joining us. Thank you for taking the time. It's been fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed it.